yeah, it really feels like the introduction to a character in a theater play, like where it's like, let me tell you everything about you now, so that way you can just enjoy the character in that scene type of thing.
Did you say theater?
Why?
How do you pronounce that word?
Sh- How are you supposed to pronounce it, William?
Theater.
I don't think it matters, Will.
That's one of the things about this podcast is sometimes I learn things about my friends I'm not
Oh
very
my God,
comfortable
shut
with.
up. Welcome to another here episode of Unresolved Textual Tension, where we are going to be talking about a very special book today with my co-host, William.
The book we're doing today is Mortal Engines by Philip Reeve. I don't know if the first one has a different title, but we're just going to call it that for now, which a lot of you may know from the Peter Jackson film, which I initially had thought was pretty bad. And then after reading the book, I'm like, oh, they did not have a lot to work with.
I forgot Peter Jackson directed that.
So apparently I already got this wrong. No, Peter Jackson didn't direct it. His assistant director directed it.
You're spreading false rumors. You're a rumor spreader.
Well, they do that thing like from the mind of, and that's like not a legally binding term.
Okay, so anyway, as we're going back to are we doing the summary right now?
Well, okay, so very quickly, because again, we don't want to lose you who have not read this book. This book is the concept of post-apocalypse steampunk where cities are on massive treads and eat each other. Municipal Darwinism, they call it.
It's a mix of dystopian, classic. What is the era called when the British went out to go, the golden era or whatever?
Colonialism?
Well, yes, colonialism, but like there was an era though. Wasn't there a name for it or whatever? But the point is, it's like that one. It's like our British brethren are going out and visiting the Orient and the Africas. And it's that kind of vibe.
The Dark Continent.
Yeah. And so we've got a little bit of that with what Will just said, where we have cities and towns that are legit. Like, I almost picture, except for, of course, they're on wheels, but I keep picturing Howl's Moving Castle, where the legs are like this. And they're like walking, because all the cities are kind of described almost like like they're not toads, but they're like, they're big hunking creatures, and they're in the middle of like this disgusting wasteland of muck and death. And our main character is a gigantic wuss.
Okay, so now that the basic premise of the world has been created, we should talk about our feelings about it a little bit.
The Age of Discovery. Thank you, Lindbergh. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yes, that's kind of its feel. Neither me or Katie liked this.
I'm so sorry, everyone, if you like this. There are things in it that I thought were cool, but I just want to preface, I'm so sorry. If you don't want to listen to this and you want to keep the nostalgia / the love of it, and you don't want to like listen to any negativity, leave now. But also you should stay anyway and see like if you agree.
No. Like the video and then leave.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, there you go.
I should say that actually in general, I want to give the disclaimer more often that you don't need to watch criticism of a thing you like if you don't want to. Like we often feel obligated to for some reason, but you don't need to. If you liked it, you liked it. Like you don't need to hear us complaining about it. The way I describe this is that when I was young, my mother would read to us like the like abridged, more child-friendly versions of like great works like The Three Musketeers, but not 50 hours long and with like simplified language a little bit. And this feels like that of another book. Like this is such a simplified, dumbed down version of the story it's telling that it genuinely is very weird. It was pretty cool if you're like 12.
Yeah.
I don't know, because like the thing is there's YA books and then this feels more like 8 to 9. Like this is real young.
We were not arguing, but we were discussing back and forth on the phone, like, because he is there's another video out, Keys to the Kingdom, that he and Maria have been doing, and by Garth not Garth
it is Garth Nix.
Yeah. And so that's for a younger audience, but that's still like really engaging, multifaceted, I guess. I don't know, I haven't read it, but the point is you have books like that, and we've also read other books like that, like in our video for the Remnants series. That's like a old fossil that hasn't been excavated on our YouTube channel. But anyway, like there are books like that, but this is like it feels muted.
It does. It very much does. It feels like all the edges have been sanded off. Like some of these characters were having discussions about more interesting things, but then that just got simplified when it went to it. And the thing is that, yeah, if I hadn't just read The Keys to the Kingdom, I might be a little bit easier on this. But like, there is very much a way to write a simple book that's still really interesting and fun and readable. The Keys to the Kingdom books I all read in one day. Like each day. Ironically, not on the days that they're after. I read Tuesday, I think on Thursday. Heresy. But they were really good. But and so like, and again, the Remnant series was also, though I don't know, that series is weirdly for kids and then not
also
and then,
not for kids. Like that's a
but
weird
then a lot of body horror.
Yeah, and like honestly, so there are a couple of parts in this book actually where I was like, man, like so one thing that really stood out to me, I'm just gonna put it to the side because that is the topic that we're on, is like for kids, not for kids, whatever, is that there's like a lot of scenes that are quite horrendous in this book, but are written in such a muted way that it doesn't touch me all that much. Like it's not like it needed more description or anything. I don't know, there's just something about it. Like for example, there's one scene at some point where they're in a boat and there are people trying to grasp onto the boat to save themselves, and a character takes a machine gun and just shoots all the people in the water around them. And our main characters are 15, so that's pretty wild. I mean, it's wild in general, but for 15-year-olds. But yet, I still don't... I guess that was the closest I felt it, I guess. Regardless, though, I just was really shocked. It's because I saw the movie when it came out, and I didn't want to see it because it just didn't really look like solid to me. It looked very like kind of when I saw the trailer for Alice in Wonderland with Johnny Depp, like all those like saturated colors and everything. I was like,
CGI fest.
Yeah, but like in a really not good way. And so I went and saw it anyway. And I remember thinking, it's not the worst one of these films that have been put out, but it's also not like I don't want to see it again, ever. I got really bored at one point and didn't want to be there anymore. I thought it was a waste of money and time. And I don't usually feel that way about a lot of movies. So, and then I thought, surely the book, I thought the book would have been like, it wouldn't have been exactly, it's almost exactly like the movie, word for word, especially in the beginning.
So the thing is, the movie, I actually did not like when I watched it initially. I thought it was sort of vapid. And then after reading the book, I'm like, oh, they did the best they could.
Yeah.
I was watching some of the scenes last night, just on the clips on YouTube, and I was like, oh, they tried to fix some of the fundamental building block story problems this had. Going back to it, though, yeah, Keys to the Kingdom is a simple book in a way, and in that it's easy for kids to read, but it's still really intelligent and really readable and interesting. And then also, even if you think of something like Coraline, which is very much for a younger age group, but is still like evocative and like it's still kind of creepy, and like there were things about it that didn't work, but it's still well written. A lot of people use the example of the Hunger Games. I'm gonna be real, I read the first Hunger Games book and didn't love it.
So okay, first Hunger Games book, I thought, I get what the hype is because there's nothing quite like this in the scenario, and I get why people like it because it's like, you know, teenage stuff. And then it was like, you know, oh, dystopian world, teenage stuff, it's a message. And then second book came out and I was like, I no longer want to read this series. Also, the first movie gave me like motion sickness.
Getting back, this just felt, muted is really the right word for it. It felt so distant, and like it felt like there were more interesting concepts at play, but they had been cut out so that like a 9-year-old would be able to keep up. And like, I was like, oh, and almost none of this works. The end of the book I found worked a little bit better than the beginning, if you forget that they haven't put the correct foundations in place to make everything work, because there is a certain amount of pathos to what's going on. But like, it also doesn't, it kind of just goes dark, like for the sake of being, of bringing some of that maturity to it. Yeah, and it has the statement, but it doesn't really back it up all the time. Again, the foundations aren't laid. But what did you think of the very end of the book when you read it, Katie?
You're so mean. You're such a nasty little thing. You're such a gremlin. So everyone, I will admit, I couldn't get to the last 30 minutes. It's because I fell asleep last night at my desk while listening to it. And I woke up when it started saying, thank you for listening to this iteration of Mortal Engines. And I was like, no. So I had to, anyway. Point is, though, everyone, I did actually notice so funnily, we'll get into a summary, like, as people have requested. And I just have to say about when part 2 of the book begins is when I felt traction starting.
Oh.
Is when I felt like there was traction and there was actual movement. But, like, I complained to William so much about, like, the characters and a lot of other stuff we'll get into. But I really couldn't stand the fact that Hester had no personality. At least I felt like there was very little to make me understand who she was, and there was no building on it over time, which I thought was wild. But then it felt like it started happening in part 2, but it also felt bipolar because prior to that moment, there was no, like, little break into her inner psyche of what's going on, and it felt so, like, 180.
Lindbergh says, I think Reeve, in his secret heart, wanted to write a grimdark. I think that's totally true. And from what I understand, he originally wanted this to be an adult book, and then his publishers were like, make it a kid's book and make it post-apocalyptic. And he was like, okay, sure. And I think he course-corrected way too hard into, let's make this for kids. Even though I didn't think this was a good book, I funnily enough don't think he's a bad author. I would actually be interested to see what his adult fiction would look like if he was just actively dumbing this down for kids.
I like Chantel's comment, and also Aaron, I feel you, I'll read that too. But Chantel said, this book shot itself in the foot at the start, in my opinion. Dropped me into a great bird's eye view of an engaging action scene. Fully agree. That hooked me right away. Not a lie. Then the author pulled the lore emergency brake, and I completely agree. And then I like Chantel also agrees with Aaron, who said, Tom was super passive. Yes, everyone, this is going to be the thesis for me of this book, is how I personally despise Tom. I personally, as a person, despise Tom, the character. He is, I have so much to say. I can't. Okay, one sentence. Tom, can I say... I can't say what I want to say, and I'll get in trouble.
Tom read like a catalog I didn't want to buy anything from. That's very funny, Chantel.
Yes, I love Chantel. That is a beautiful way of saying what I wanted to say, which was much cruder. But Tom is a soggy piece of toast.
So to explain who Tom is, it's a good transition into the
why did
my camera forget that? We start with Tom again, who is like a museum's assistant. He lives on London, which is one of the like mid-sized traction cities. It's not actually that large, and again, the world has all these cities moving around because there were ice storms and I don't think it was volcanoes. I think it was earthquakes that used to make it so they needed to move around a lot, but now they don't really need to, but that's the way things work. And they live under a principle called municipal Darwinism, where bigger cities eat smaller cities. And like, that's considered okay. This is an interesting philosophy that will never be explored beyond the fact that...
That's okay. Let's stop right there. There are cool ideas in this story that are kind of like very whimsically fun and awful. And for some, like the writing style, and maybe it's not the writing style, just the level of exploration into those concepts, it's so glossed over. It's never like briefly like explored in a specific detail, or maybe it is every now and again, but not in a way that's satisfying. This world has fun, but is unexplored fun.
Yes. Again, it feels like there is a more interesting book version of this book where they go into it more, but it's not actually this book. And so Tom is like mid-level. He doesn't have parents because he's a YA protagonist.
Parents were smushed by a building in the great something of something.
The Great Tilt.
Yeah, the Great Tilt. And I just... Okay, everyone... Keep in mind, as Will continues, Tom is 15.
Please bear in mind, he is 15. He is not 10, which you might feel from this book that he is, but apparently he is not. And so the book starts with London eating a smaller city. It catches a smaller city. How a larger city catches a smaller city does not make sense. And I get that this is steampunk, but it doesn't even do the steampunk. Like, the thing is, like, when you have steampunk or a magic system or even a sci-fi magic, like, you still need to have it make sense. So it's not like, for example, I thought while I was reading this, that like larger cities should have nuclear reactors so they can actually put out more power than smaller cities, or in the movie they use like harpoons, or like there should be some explanation for why.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, there should be some explanation for why a larger city can move faster than a smaller city. Like this isn't like with boats that can be the case because larger boats have like bigger engines. So that like they can catch mid-sized boats, but it's never they apparently still just use gas to power these cities. And again, I get that it's steampunk, so like if you put a gear on it, it suddenly magically works, but I would like a little bit more magic unobtainium involved.
Aaron did mention this isn't steampunk, and then Science Fantastic said it's diesel punk. But yes, but the point is it's that vibe, everyone, is that it's got that mecha vibe, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, diesel punk is correct.
I like how it's never, even though it seemed, okay, I think I know what it is. It feels like it should have been technical with the way it's introduced, but it never went into detail and how the smaller places were caught, and like what Will was just saying, how it was actually fueled. And I feel like it's so interesting, and I can't picture the world without that I feel like something is missing.
Well, so the problem is that this book really should explore the ecosystem of municipal Darwinism and a moving city, attraction city, but it never actually does. Partly because the main character just leaves the city, as we'll see early on. But anyway, when a new city is caught, they go in and they basically like disassemble it, which I thought was going to be really cool and interesting, and it ended up being a little bit more. So again, they get to this idea later that municipal Darwinism, like you don't kill the civilians, and like I would have liked to see a lot more of the process of like this. I thought was a really cool part of the book, that they go in and they're going to gut it and take stuff out, and like the librarians are going to see if there's any cool artifacts like CDs.
What exactly happens to process all the material? Also, if you're destroying an entire town like that, aren't you also ruining food sources? Like, what happens to all the food that the other place had that you could have utilized in your stores? Like that kind of stuff.
Again, this is the problem, is that the ecosystem doesn't really make sense. It's such a cool idea to have cities eat each other, but that's not really what happens. They don't decide to like bolt on a different part of the city to theirs, or they ingest the people, or like they like grab the fuel with the tank. Like there's a lot of really cool, small, gritty things that don't necessarily you don't need necessarily to ground the realism of the world, but would just be cool to have. This is one of the things I said about the Keys to the Kingdom, which is like it just has so much cool shit, and it builds off the ideas of the ridiculous ideas involved of the world in a really cool way. So like in that world, like because everything is like the mythology is Judeo-Christian or whatever, like nothing, because God created the world from nothing, is both a destructive force and the only thing you can build things from. And so like is like that's just a very funny way of handling like the magic system based off of like one ridiculous line, and then the nithlings from the nothing are like less human or more human, or if they touch something they'll start turning that thing into like a living thing. And like, you know, it would be really cool to see more of the diesel punk like stuff.
I think I think this could have not felt like it was missing something if the world itself feels like it's supposed to be a character, with how much love and attention it was given in like most areas. And it felt like he wanted, like that makes so much sense with the turning it into a kid's book. It's because like I feel like he really wanted, like I felt like there was more to it, but because that was not included, I couldn't picture some of the core scenes that were happening, such as the deconstruction of the other cities. I just couldn't like really quite picture how does it grasp onto the city? How does it, it's because Tom seems very invested in it, and it seems like a really, like we have several scenes where London and other like towns and stuff consume other places, and it's never quite like described, and I don't know, it bothers me, I guess. It just feels like a missing part of the spirit.
Well, okay, and so I'll talk about this later, but it also undermines the themes of the book, because later on Tom's belief in municipal Darwinism will be like a core part of his character arc. I say arc, more like a character like flop, but whatever. And like, so not having that in here causes a problem later. But anyway, he goes down, he meets Thaddeus Valentine, who's like a cool explorer who has an airship.
And a really hot daughter that has a really cool white wolf named Dog.
So random.
That he got for her from the also, I don't understand why it's brought up twice. I feel like it was supposed to mean something, but I maybe it was just brought up twice and it was just part of the dialogue. Talking about where his daughter was from, Catherine, Where was she from again? It was
She's from Nuevo Angeles or something like that. But it's like she still has a British accent.
yeah, I know. And okay, everyone. So she didn't live with him. She lived with her mother. And then, like, a couple years ago or whatever, he went and picked her up from there and, brought her up. I think, like, her mother passed away or something. But I feel like there should be a culture, like, why would you mention she's from a different place and that had even happened if it didn't have an influence on the stuff going on? Like, for example, she had, like, American culture or something like that, and that's what makes her different from everybody else and looks at what we're going to discuss later on differently and stuff like that. But whatever.
And again,
Yeah.
she has an English accent, which would at least been kind of cool if she didn't, and it had been a little bit different. But anyway, she's very hot. Tom is very like, oh my god, she's so hot. And Thaddeus Valentine is like a hero of his essentially. But he's almost attacked and killed by some assassin girl, and like Tom saves his life and then runs after the girl, and then her scarf ninja thing falls down, and then what about her face, Katie?
She has a gigantic scar, no nose, and it's like, and it twists her. For all of you not visually watching me, I just swirled around on my face to show like the way the scar goes across the face. But it's like diagonal, and it's going like through the nose, or not nose as it may be, and like curls her lip into like a scowl. It's awesome. I love that. I hate Hester. Like, hate's a strong word.
Yeah, and it's funny because again, it cuts through her eye. Her nose is like a stub and into her mouth. And like in the movie, it's just like a little. It's like it's more than you normally would get from a scar, but it's like this part here. It's more than you would normally get, but it's not. Characters, when they tend to get bad scars in books, tend to get okay scars in movies because the actors don't want to play with prosthetics on.
Oh, is that why? I thought it was just to make them more physically attractive.
It's partly that. Like, I know with Tyrion in A Game of Thrones, partly it was the actor didn't want to act through an aesthetic. Not an aesthetic, a prosthetic.
I don't blame him, though. It's because that was like a million seasons. Could you imagine putting that on Anyway, continue.
So he's going to get her, and then she, like, at one point they confront each other, and she's like, Thaddeus Valentine killed my parents, and I'm out for revenge. And Tom was like, what?
Yes, but let's pause right there. I would like to point out a character feature of Tom during this scene that made me instantly dislike him. So, Hester attempts, though we don't know her name is Hester, the scarred girl attempts to kill Thaddeus Valentine with a knife. Tom intervenes and stops it, saving him. She runs off, and in the chase, as he's running, he's thinking in his head, I'll catch her, and then I'll be really famous. It's because people will know I'm super cool and that I saved Valentine. And then he'll like me, and then I can date his hot daughter, basically, is the translation. And then another character starts to run after, a separate, not involved character starts to run after Hester as well to, like, help stop. And instead of thinking, oh, we should team up to catch her or something like that, Tom thinks to himself, no, he's not going to get my glory. And I'm just like, what a little shit. What a little shit.
It's one of these things where, like, I get that maybe he's trying to show he's, like, a little bit more fallible than the normal YA protagonist. And, like, I usually like small little thoughts that, like, add realism. But, like, in this case, it just made me not like Tom. Like, we just met Tom, and I didn't find it charming. Tom, to begin with, is such a hollow vessel of a character that, to me, like, even this little hint was like, okay, calm down. Also, if you have adrenaline going, you don't really think those things. I've had adrenaline going in stressful situations like that. And, like, that's not what you think.
You're not living on a moving London city in second-class citizenry where you want to date the hot daughter of a really famous dude.
It is funny how everyone's like, she's so hot. And I was like, but is she bitchy? No. Second favorite character. No, she gets thrown off the London.
No, she jumps. She jumps into the trash chute thing. And then Thaddeus comes out.
Tom's like, oh my God, she said the weirdest thing about you. It can't be true. And Valentine is like, no, it can't. And bam, he throws Tom off.
That is not their discussion, but yes.
That's essentially what happened. It's bam, and he throws him off the city.
And while this is happening, that other character who ran after Hester in the distance saw what happened and how Valentine was like, oh, wait, what was it? Wait, what's the scene? It's like, fuck, I'm ruining it.
Long live the king.
Yeah, he's like, long live the king.
Funny.
And then off goes Tom And I wish he died there, but alas.
So there was a lot of discussion in this in the Discord because I read through a bunch of the old comments because we're doing a new thing where we do the comments differently. So there's a lot of discussion about Tom and Hester's dynamic and how much nobody likes Tom, but at the same time, like Hester needs somebody around to bounce off of ideas. And then also maybe we don't really like Hester that much. And then some people who liked that he got off of London this quickly into the book, and other people who wanted him to stay a little bit longer. I think me and Katie are more of the we would have liked to stay longer. There's a fundamental problem with this book where like the idea of these traction predatory cities is really cool, but then the main like 70% of the book is not spent in one of them. It's spent on airships. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. I get it because you want to be able to see different dynamics, but at the same time, part of what's really interesting is the ecosystem and digestive tract of this city.
And there's so much of that theme saturated in every moment of this book that it just, whether or not it would have made the story better or not, doesn't matter to me at this point, although I objectively think it would. But I personally don't understand why Tom wouldn't have, like, there's all these layers to London, the moving city, and there's this one detail that comes up later on where it's like this one stone building, a church from original London is there, but it wasn't made to be moved, so the constantly moving city is making it like not steady, or it's like cracking and breaking and stuff. And so that concept made me think, wait, how are the other buildings? And how jiggly is moving London to the point where that's an issue? Like, how steady is it? And what technology, like, I don't need to know, like, oh, like, this technology was made, but just a little description to understand, because, hell, Tom's parents died because of that. They literally died because something fell on them due to all that. So I don't know why we weren't given, and plus it's also interesting.
Well, that's the thing is, it's a large predatory city. We came for the large predatory city. This is like Vampires of El Norte when we came for vampires in Mexico, and instead we just got some dumb chupacabra bipedal creature. And we didn't get vampires. And so, yeah, no. And the thing is, it doesn't need to be realistic but it does need to be plausible, and the actual intricacies of it should be there because, again, those are interesting, and also it does help ground the world a little bit.
Miss Sally Snow's right. Well, Catherine was still, this is also what I thought.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about that.
Yeah,
so she says, well, Catherine was still in London. She could have been used better than Pod and Poop Cookies. Okay, so part of the problem is that, yes, then about half of this plot line will now be Catherine, the hot daughter, trying to figure out what's going on. But part of the problem is that, to me, until it felt at first like we were just biding time with hers. Like, okay. Yeah. We know what's kind of going to happen here. I don't understand. It's not a very good mystery plot. And she also only goes to like 2 places in the city, which is interesting when we do get to see that. There's a part where she goes into the sanitation system. That's one of the better parts of the book because it's actually really cool to see.
It is my favorite scene, even though it's depressing. It is my favorite scene in the entire book. It is my second favorite scene of the entire book. There's one in particular that I thought was so masterfully written. It made me change my mind about the author. And it made me feel like, wait, I just wasn't given the best of his writing. There's a very specific chapter, and it's short too. I wonder if you know which one I'm talking about.
No, I don't. That's what I was thinking. I wonder, again, what he would be like if he was like writing without, the weights on, Rock Lee style.
Yeah, I know. It's because that's how I feel about this now. It's because, I'll mention it just in case I forget it, but I'd like to talk about it later. There's a scene where there's a character called Shrike, and he is walking on the bottom of an sea floor, and during that scene, the descriptions of what's going on around him, that is such a good, oh my god, it was so fun the way he wrote it. And I was like, why isn't the rest of this book like that? Lila picked my favorite. That was like my favorite line in the whole book. The crabs raising their arms as if to a crab god or whatever. That's how it's described. Oh god, but you can imagine it. They're like
like that one YouTube video where they're dancing.
No,
that's what I imagined. So here's the thing. Hester has to have Tom's help because she got wounded or whatever, and he needs her because he doesn't know how to survive on mud. Which I did think was funny that he did.
Yeah, I did too.
And the thing is, in the next half chapter, she then tells him her entire backstory. And the novel is literally almost word for word like, she was a strange mix of like tough and soft. Like she would suddenly say things and then go back into silence. And like, it's the most bland, straightforward way of describing it. And this is part of the problem, is that the writing here is so flat and just telly. Again, there's a way to do this where it's not like that.
You mean in this section of the book?
I mean, throughout, but it especially
Yes.
shows up in this section where he's just telling you things about how Esther acts instead of like showing it through sustained dialogue. He shows it through snippets.
Oh yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, no, she just says a thing and they keep walking and she says another and then he'll mention that she said another thing. It's very flat, it's very straightforward. There's no nuance to it. It's also way too early to learn about her tragic backstory. I don't know why you wouldn't just keep that as tension for later and growth. Like it makes no sense. She would just tell a stranger this, so you're like, this is not a real person. This is an archetype of a person.
Yeah, it really feels like the introduction to a character in a theater play, you know? Like where it's like, let me tell you everything about you now so that way you can just enjoy the character in that scene type of thing. You know what I mean?
Did you say theater?
Why?
How do you pronounce that word?
How are you supposed to pronounce
Theater.
it? I don't think it fucking matters, Will.
That's one of the things about this podcast is sometimes I learn things about my friends I'm not very
Oh my God,
comfortable
shut
with.
up. So the point is though, guys, is that during this time, it's almost like this was spoken about when we talked about all the Murmuring Bones, I think. And how you explained how in Game of Thrones, take a shot, that he does it like in a way that's actually helpful, but it's one of these scenes where it's like all these things have already happened and now
It's
we're being
montagey.
Yeah.
And we're catching up.
Yeah, but so that's what happens here. And it's kind of lame. It's because we were just introduced to Hester. We are basically just introduced to Tom. And instead of giving us back and forth live action of what's happening, we're being told in past tense, like what has happened since they began. And in that summary, we don't get any raw feeling for what's happening. So it feels like really far away.
Chantel says, Tom hit play on Hester's audiobook. It really does feel like that. It's weird. And he doesn't really have reactions to what she's saying. And so it's like, it's a very just one-sided
It's
telly.
so weird.
Yeah. Again, Tom is nothing of a character. He's just like, anyway, they end up finding some people who are like scavenging the poop of London, which I thought was kind of an interesting idea of, again, the ecosystem of it, but we don't really get anything more than that.
Oh, dude, guys, that scene was so heartbreaking in my opinion. There's all these people. So it's called the gut, but it's like the lower gut of the, which makes sense.
I'm not talking about that yet. No, I'm talking about...
Wait, what part are you talking about?
Remember Hester and Tom meet a bunch of people who are harvesting the leftover remains of the city that London had left behind?
Yeah.
Am I misremembering this entirely?
No, I think
They
you're
meet
right.
like scavenger people, don't they?
No, they meet the family. The family on the other place where they get kidnapped, drugged.
Oh, maybe those people just talk about how they used to do that. Hester and Tom meet another family that's like a smaller moving town with like 100 people on it or something.
It's all
like
the
that.
same family. It's basically a giant inbred clan, is what the vibe I got was.
Very Hispanic. And so they think they're going to be nice, but they're not. They drug them and they're going to sell them as slaves at a market.
Which was, I think that's great. That's fine. That's exactly what I expected. That hillbilly slavers. That's cool. I also, in this scene, Tom is really, really, really being portrayed as an idiot. For God, he has the naivety and the weird, wondrous lack of like control that makes him feel like he's an 8-year-old going to New York City for the first time. It's so bizarre. It's really bizarre. As they're captured and they're being held in this like wooden, it's not a cage, it's like a room. He's trying to undo this wooden board so that way they can escape because Hester's bleeding to death in a corner. And because we have completely glossed over this. She got shot in the leg at some point. But the point is, so like half the book she's wounded and barely alive. But I digress. He's trying to get the board off and he finally gets it off and it's taken him the whole day. And then finally he's like, you could help. And then she goes over there and she kicks pokes open an entire hole in the rotted wood. And he's like, well, I could have done that. And she's like, well, you didn't. And I'm like, is that supposed to be clever? Because it's not. It's really dumb. And I think it's supposed to be funny. But in the situation they're in, with what's been written so far, it's not.
Yeah, it's more like just a weird thing where the book just seems to be like, oh, she did it. It's not like she did like a cool karate kick that like used a bunch of momentum to break it or something. It was just like...
She shot in the leg, and she still had the strength to do that.
It was very weird. And the thing about it is that I get that Tom's plot is, I was a sheltered kid who really believed in the ideals of the world, and my plot is going to be being disillusioned as I see that the world is more complicated and how the lower half of society lives. But the thing is, Tom doesn't feel like a naive teenager. He feels like an 8-year-old, like Katie said, wandering into New York City for the first time and being like, what are the cars?
Mommy, what is that thing over there with the wheels?
Exactly. And so it's frustrating because, again, it's written in such an obvious, and he's also useless. That's the other thing to note, is that Tom very rarely does anything in this book. There's a part later that I'll talk about with Pirates where he could have had an active role, and instead the book just hasn't go forward.
I was waiting for something more to happen because I remembered your warning, and I was like listening to it. I was like, oh, I see. There was a lot of potential here for growth, and there is a little, but not, I feel like, what should have happened.
So, like, at this point where he's trying to get out, that's good. That's some activeness. But, like, this is the only part of activeness, I think, for, like, the whole book. Like, again, like, he's constantly getting dragged from place to place, which is not what you want a character to do. So, in the Keys to the Kingdom books, for example, the main character, Arthur Penhaligon, he's very active, and he takes a very active role in the world in terms of interacting with other characters, deciding what he's going to do in action scenes. He's an active character, and an active character is a way of having a more simplified character still feel vital and engaging because their actions show you who they are. You don't necessarily need a ton of dialogue with them if they make impactful choices.
Once again, wonderful reference to any of you who are like, but I don't know what that means. Sean Kendrick from the Scorpio races, everyone. Perfect example. If you want a great written example of that kind of character, Sean Kendrick, ladies and gentlemen, go read the book.
That character specifically is a very stoic and silent character. And one of the things I was really, and this is one of the reasons me and Katie did a close reading of the first chapter of it, is how does the author make him feel so vibrant and like he's a real character making decisions when he doesn't talk a ton of the time?
And barely does anything.
Katie, when I say you and I did a close reading of, what does that even mean? Is that one of our normal videos that just anyone on the internet could tramp by?
What did you just say? Could tramp by?
Tramp by, like, boom, 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 I'm tramping by.
No, you can't. You have to pay us money.
Oh, interesting. But how could they do that? Do they just throw dollars at their screen?
Yeah, it's actually really easy.
The funny thing is that she's pretending, but that she also, I don't think, actually knows from what we've learned in the lessons.
For the love of God, you just do the spiel.
Okay, all right. We have a Patreon. You can join and support independent journalism. At the Parasocial Darlings tier, which is the higher tier, me and Katie do one video live stream a month exclusively where we look at the prose and of a book and like the descriptions and the dialogue and like the actual nitty gritty of the book that we don't get to here. And then in the slightly lower tier, we have the book club. This was a book club pick. You guys picked this book. I don't know why, but 1/4 of our content is slave to your whims.
Yeah, let me just tell you guys, I was talking to William on the telephone, and I was saying to him, why in God's name did you allow them to pick this?
And I said, okay, that's a very good Stalin impression, but this is a democracy, Katie. And so I pick one at the middle of the month that everybody does a live stream for, and then there's one at the end that you guys pick. And also on our Discord, we have like a dedicated channel to it. You guys always are having really interesting conversations on there about it. I always wish I could join in earlier, but I read them at like the last minute because I don't have time. And the Discord you can get for only $5 American.
Buckaroonies right there. That's cheaper than a McDonald's meal.
5 of your American dollars can get you access to our Discord, though not the book club channels. And you can feel good about supporting independent journalism. And if you want to support us, but you can't afford to, because a lot of people say that, hit the like on this video. Everybody says that. All YouTubers say that, but it actually helps the video. If we can get to 3,000 likes on this video, we will open an OnlyFans where we just read erotica and critique it. That would be so funny if we did that. Join our Patreon. It's good time. Tom and Hester, they're going to get auctioned off to be slaves, and then they get saved by cool bisexual lady Anna Fang, who is like a Chinese air pirate.
Wait, how do you know she's bisexual? Wait, does later on she's...
No, but it's just that's the trope. Like, I know everyone in our Discord would be like, step on me, mommy, about her. So, like, it's the internet parlance. And in the movie, she has a somewhat androgynous look to her.
She does.
That lesbians would be very into. People really like her as a character. I
don't. I think she's really lame and, like, not multi-dimensional and too nice. And, like... She's a little Girl Scout. She's a little Girl Scout, and I don't like that.
Okay, the other thing is that I listened to this on audiobook, and there's this thing with accents.
Oh, yeah, I know.
There are certain accents where if you do an accurate accent, it sounds as racist as if you were doing a cartoony one. And Chinese accents have that problem, where it just sounds like you're being actively racist when you do a fairly authentic and correct one. Temeraire had the same problem.
This audio book narrator, so during this time, actually, there's one, like, a mosquito of a character. She's the wife of the dude that took them prisoner to sell them. And when the narrator guy does her voice, it's like it's a pantomime of a British gay dude, but like with a lisp. And it's like, where? I can't even do it. I can't do it.
The thing is, my dear. Yeah, it's like
but British. And that was so funny to hear him because all I could imagine is this older dude in a recording booth being like,
yeah. It's like a very British nanny voice. Like, it's so cartoony. And so, like, partly, and that just kind of fed my interpretation of the characters, that it just felt kind of cartoony and weird to me, and I just could never quite get past that. We've talked before about how some audiobook narrators can really bring a lot of life to a thing, and then others don't. And in this case, don't is part of the problem. But like, she's like the rogue Han Solo type character, and she's like, my family got sold into slavery, so I didn't want to send. It just sounded Essex to me. That may be... you guys have a tiny island and way too many accents for it. I'm going to demand...
Oh my god, I know. So many accents.
I'm going to demand...
So cool.
No, they need to simplify. They need to boil them down to just a few good ones.
Oh, who's going to determine that?
England's like this big,
Stalin.
and it acts like it has a ton of people. Nah... Stalin or anti-colonialism. Sometimes I say a joke and then and it'd be funny if I kept going, but I forget what I was gonna say. And that happens a lot.
She rescues them, and then they go off into the sky, and it's really cool, I guess. I don't know. Wasn't that cool? And they go to a flying town full of balloon ships, whatever, airships. It's like a giant airport in the sky where people hang out too. And it's so...
And apparently there's no sparks the entire time, which is so dumb. Like, again, it's like... It's like Airtown in a video game. Like, you get to that level in Final Fantasy where you've gotten the airship, so you get to go to Airtown.
And you can't use your fire weapon or whatever, so you have to use another weapon that you pick up there. But anyway, so, like, on this flying area, everything's exotic. Everything's from, like, other places, you know, like the Orient and the Africas, not a country, the Africas.
Nuevo Maya.
Oh, yeah. And like, have you tried this steamed bat? And then, of course, we have Tom's perspective that's like, all of this is so strange and exotic. The word exotic is used like 3 or 4 times.
And I kind of get it. He wants to do the Mummy Returns, like, kind of fun British colonialism without a lot of the colonial baggage involved. But like, the thing about this is that we're here for cities eating each other, not a sky town. So later we're going to meet a pirate city, and I found that to be a much more thematically interesting destination to go to, and I wish we had gotten there sooner and stayed there sooner than this like sky town, which basically is just like a trading place that goes around, but there's no like there's nothing specific to this world about it.
Also, there's no need for us to be here, as Will and I discussed together privately and not in front of a camera. When we get there, there's a character that's introduced called Shrike. And Shrike is this basically Terminator thing.
Well, okay, so what happens is back in the city.
Okay, you're going.
Valentine, yeah. Valentine is like, there's also an evil mayor. So the evil mayor of the city is like, and he talks like an evil mayor. He's like the most
Oh, he reminds
subtle
me of
character
Frodo
ever.
Or whatever.
Yeah, but like
from,
without
the Hunchback.
yeah, but without like the frustrated sexuality that we all immediately identify with. I meant anyway.
No, I kind of picked that up between him and I was gonna say Valentine's daughter.
But he's basically like, oh, Valentine, you idiot, you didn't check to see if they were dead. We'll have to send my experiments.
Oh yeah,
The mad scientist experiment is like a middle-aged lady with a funny voice, which I did like. But she's also such an unsubtle character. And they're basically like, we have to unleash the Shrike. And basically what it is that this is a post-apocalyptic world, right? And one of the remnants of an earlier war is like the Hollow Men. And they're like basically the Terminator, like cyborg Terminator. And this specific one is like, we'll kill Hester Shaw.
That's actually perfect. That is an exact way that the narrator does it. And Shrike also has wire dreadlocks, I guess, that come off his skull. And, like, there's blue, like, innards of him showing and stuff. Like, wait, oh my god, stop it. There are 38 Mortal Engine fan fictions on AO3.
What? Okay. I'm so sad.
I need to go look at that while you talk about
To be fair, it's probably fanfiction.net was AO3 is a kind of an older one, so by the time that trilogy was done, you would probably have gotten more. Yeah, but anyway, yes, he has green glowing eyes. Shrike is a Necron. He would be cooler if he was. And Shrike is, so there's this weird thing where the book will start talking from Shrike's point of view, but it switches into present tense. It's all in past tense, and then when it's talking in Shrike's point of view, and sometimes Valentine's, it'll switch to present tense. And like, I kind of get it, because present tense does give a little bit of like an eerie feeling to what's happening. But like, it's annoying to me because I immediately am like, why did we switch to present? Like, it becomes noticeable to me.
There's only 42 on fanfiction.net.
What? That's so weird.
37 or whatever. And a lot of it's in like Dutch or something.
Limburg says, I wish Reeve would write adult fiction about the stalkers. I originally read this comment as, I wish Reeve would write adult fan fiction about the stalkers. And I would just like to say, I'm here for it. It switches into present tense for the mayor too. Yeah, I don't know why it does that. His thing is he'll get his heart's desire if he gets Tom and Hester back. And we're going to intermittently get viewpoints of him hunting them. And it's kind of interesting and like a little bit atmospheric, but I wouldn't even go so far as to say creepy.
I really like this one. What if Tom Natsworthy stayed on board the pirate town of Tunbridge Wells? Watch as the entire universe of Mortal Engines is rewritten as Tom follows a new path.
Don't make fun of the 13-year-old, okay? We're not here to make fun of fan fiction.
They didn't get very far into the story. It's 5,000 words long.
So the Shrike is like, okay, I'm Terminator. I'm gonna go find Hester Shaw, and she confronts them on the air town, the air town, and basically we find out, because it's just told to us immediately, I think, that Hester, after having had her family killed by Valentine, got like raised by the Shrike, who liked to collect things, and he was like a cold father because he has no emotions. And you would think, oh, this is actually really kind of interesting because, you know, she is out for revenge. He is a relentless killing machine. Did he teach her things? Is this one of her ways of trying to relate to him? Would she have chosen a path of non-revenge if she hadn't ended up with an homicidal monster? Yeah, no, that's not explored.
The writing for their relationship was so overwhelmingly subpar that I actively got angry after he expired.
The problem is there's really no nuance. It's a very interesting idea for a relationship, that love and hate thing that I'm always really fascinated with in fiction. And again, it could be used to tell some kind of a theme, but it really isn't. We get no sense for what her childhood was like. There's no moment to we never get a sense that she's really attached to him. There's a part towards the end that kind of plays into this a little bit, where he reveals that what he's going to get out of this is, no, he's not going to kill her. He's going to kill Tom and bring her back and put her into a metal body so she'll be like him. And she won't have memories, but they'll be together and she'll be as good as him. And she is kind of oh, I actually want that. And that's really interesting.
I wish that was introduced way before, or in a different way, because that would have slapped so hard with her wanting to do it, it would have been really cool if I don't know what I would have done personally, but it would have been really fun if Tom had to go after them or some sort of like tension there where he's like, no, I'm not gonna let you do this, and then them have a whole confrontation that lasts more than 5 seconds.
Okay, so what we need to talk about for a minute is character arcs and how they work, because I can't believe this, but so many authors don't know how to do this. Character arcs is the character starts in one place with certain beliefs or whatever, and well, in this case anyway, there's different kinds of character arcs, but in this kind of a book, it's they start in a place with certain beliefs, they go through a journey that challenges them and their beliefs, and then by the end, they're different than they were at the beginning. They've either re-examine these beliefs and believe in them more, they come to a more nuanced understanding of them, or they've rejected them. So for example, in Tom's, it's municipal Darwinism, which he thinks is a good system, and then throughout the book he realizes is a bad system, and therefore it shouldn't continue. But here's the problem. The idea of him in municipal Darwinism, he's never really shown to really particularly believe in it, and we don't even really get it explained beyond like it's an okay thing to eat for larger cities to eat smaller cities.
It feels like a gimmick when it's being mentioned, like, oh, that's a clever little play on words there, and that's it.
So the problem is his conflicts with it really only start in his conflicts with challenging his views of what municipal Darwinism is good for only really come about when he hits the pirate city, which we haven't even gotten to. It's like two-thirds of the way through the story, and then he isn't really challenged with the idea. He's just challenged a little bit, and then sees a town that's a static city that's nice, and he's like, okay, fuck London, I guess we're not doing this anymore. And so part of the problem is that this idea of, does she want to become more like a stalker to escape the pain of her parents? Does she want to lose herself?
Does she want to be a better killer?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is this the only way she knows how to process grief? This isn't brought up until her last interaction with Shrike. And so we, as the audience, can't really think this through. She can't think it through. There's no
exploration or delve into the taste. Like, you know, you can either say, oh, it tasted like chicken, or you could say the juice of the breasts popped in his mouth as he, you know what I mean? Like, there could be, I know food metaphors.
Not even. I didn't hear the first part of you said, so I just heard juicy breast popped into his mouth. And I was like, what the fuck happened? The thing is, I think it's just unexplored. The depths of it really aren't explored. So? She's not really explored as a character. Like, why is she doing this? Why did she pick revenge over something else? Did she think about trying other things? Did she...
Well, she's just not focused on almost literally... She says... I mean, I'm so curious how many words she says in comparison to Tom. Or Tom doesn't say a lot either, I guess. Technically, we get a lot of his inner thoughts, but we just get nothing.
Well, that's kind of part of the problem.
Yeah, I guess.
Is that both characters are very lacking. And going back to the idea of character arc and theme, so this whole time, Valentine's daughter, whose name I blanked on for some reason.
Catherine.
Catherine Hot Daughter. She's like, oh, because Valentine got sent away to scout something. And she's like, oh, what's going on with this Shaw person? And there seems to be stuff afoot in the city. I'm going to explore. So she has no supporting cast for the first half of her plot line, which makes everything feel sort of weirdly distant. Like,
yeah, I was going to say, like, she's in a bubble.
Yeah, the city doesn't really feel like a city. It just and it doesn't even really feel like there are people there or she has a life.
I do want to come back to the concept. I just want to briefly, you and me, mention some of the things about how the air city thing or the air town place was completely useless. But you know how Catherine has that gold pass that lets her go anywhere she wants, basically?
Mm-hmm.
Why did the author decide to give her that, freebie pass and instead not make her journey the journey of sneaking into the gut from where she's at, so from top to bottom, the classic delving into hell journey type of thing, where the deeper she gets, the worse it gets, and then she could make friends along the way, including Pod, which is the other character that saw what happened between, Mufasa scene, and that's how it could have happened. But no, Instead she just instantly is like, yeah, no, I've got a freebie pass, let me just go on in.
Well, and she basically gets one scene where she goes into the sanitation. So basically, going back to character arcs for a moment, she has the same character arc as Tom in that she's supposed to be disillusioned by the city, and she's supposed to be like, oh my god, all this privilege sits on a bed of rot. And I just said that more elegantly than the book will in 300 pages or whatever. Like, the book is, again, just so... you never get the sense that these characters really believe that the city is great. They're just kind of like, oh, it's okay. And then like they see something bad and they're like, oh my God, it's all terrible. Because she goes into she has, again, the kind of disillusioned story arc where she goes into to try to find the guy who saw her dad and Shaw and all that. She goes into the sanitation system essentially, and she sees that like there's a bunch of prisoners who are basically just being used as slave labor, and then maybe their bodies recycled as fuel later.
And these are like prisoners, convicts that, tax evasion. What was the other thing that they said? I don't remember. Something, it's all like paltry crimes,
Yeah, like talking bad about the mayor, and it's like
yeah.
everyone there is cartoonishly evil.
I know,
just
it's
like,
so, I was just gonna say, why can't it be like, literally some people are also born into it, maybe like there's a whole community down there where it's like there are kids and like wives of workers and stuff. Like there could have been like, because it's described as this gigantic area, massive, like bigger than her home is like the office, and her home's like a giant mansion. So it's like,
and the thing is, this is one of the more interesting parts because we're getting to see the city work. And again, that's one of the cool things about why we came to this book. But yeah, it could have been done even more. Again, it's kind of like the city eating the other city scene where it's like, good, but let's keep working on this. Let's do a revision to add some details. And she meets Pod here, and she's very disillusioned with the city after this. She's like, oh my gosh. She gets depressed.
she's like, how can I go to a posh party when people are swimming in shit? Like deep down in the gut of this place.
Yeah, and it's like, it's too fast. That's not how people really process.
I would have been fine if because she's pretty like white bread, so like I feel like she would have been like she seems like a do-gooder, a little like innocent do-gooder. So I could believe it.
It's too simplified.
With everything else, yes. And no, it's not interesting that way, but I feel like he could get away with it a little bit with how infrequent her scenes are as well. So I could assume over time, because there are weeks and weeks spanning in between this. So I could potentially believe it, especially since she's not a main character, but along compounded with all the other issues we're currently discussing, it doesn't work.
So the problem is that the way people process seeing how their privileged lives are upheld is like they immediately try to justify things, and then they try to be like, okay, well, it's not that bad, so they'll downplay it, or they'll be like, okay, we can make some differences now, or like without going into full revolution.
We don't know what type of life she comes from before now.
That's part of the problem, is like she doesn't have strong sense of municipal Darwinism. So it's like, and so it just feels unrealistic. She has none of those reactions. She just immediately moves to, I'm depressed about how the city is. Anyway, going back to the town airship thing you wanted to talk about.
I just wanted to like mention, it's because that scene and getting to that scene and leaving that scene takes up such a massive amount of the story. I mean, overall, I like 1/5. I would say 1/6.
There's a lot of it, and it doesn't go anywhere because, again, it doesn't have anything really to do with municipal Darwinism or the predatory cities. And the thing is, it's mentioned at one point that, like, larger cities have to be careful because smaller suburbs will, like, attack them. And, like, there's this whole thing about, like, certain cities can eat other cities, and we'll meet in a minute another city that doesn't operate by the rules. And, like, so all of that is interesting, but this is just Airtown. And the thing is, the way they get out of this is they basically just run away from Shrike.
That's what I'm saying, though. It's the issue of leaving, going someplace, but coming right back to the same area is what this scene is. Like, nothing happened to really help forward, except for, I suppose, you could argue, it, like, all of this is to introduce, I guess, Anna Fang mostly, and Anna Fang's important later on. But I don't know. I just feel like it's very disorganized and it feels awkward.
It could have been done differently, because after this, what happens is that Tom gets basically railroaded to running away from the Shrike. Again, Tom doesn't really make a lot of decisions in this. And they get on a ship, they fall down. Oh, there's a spark. The whole city starts to fall because, again, also, by the way, it's actually very hard to ignite a air balloon of that type. Like, this is a problem they had in World War I. Yeah, because the problem is that fire needs air to create itself, and like the outward pressure, like if you shoot a not a hot air balloon, but the kind of helium I don't know if it's helium, whatever the airships were made of at the time that was flammable, you actually wouldn't be able to get into it because the outward pressure would be too high. Anyway, that's not neither here nor there.
I like that. No, thank you for the history lesson. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love random things. And so, but also it's like, it's just unbelievable that an entire city would not have one spark this whole time. Not to mention there's other gases you can use besides the flammable ones. And so what happened is they fall and basically they get caught by a pirate city. And here they meet a cartoon pirate with a monkey. He is just such a cartoonish character. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what?
Oh my god, I'm so happy you said that because I was trying to be accepting when I was listening to it. I was like, oh
it's
no,
so
like
fucking stupid.
So, I know.
It's so dumb. It's so like
the monkey was so I know the monkey really killed me. I was like, what?
Well, and the other thing is like
so
this
cartoony.
This is a guy this is a pirate who's trying to be more posh. And so like it really doesn't make sense that he would have a monkey. It's not even like a cool
no,
like
that's definitely not proper like he's trying to be. He like, says that repeatedly.
It's not even like a cyborg monkey, which would be cool. And basically, they're gonna get to be slaves, but then Tom like reveals that he has an upper class accent, and so the pirate mayor is like,
"Oh my god, a proper gent! I want you to be my lover."
You remember this book very differently than I do. That is the fanfic version that you were talking about earlier. No, he's like, oh, you got to teach me manners and stuff. I want to be a high class. I want to be a high class gentleman, if you know what I'm saying. Kind of a shtick. And the thing about this is where I really like, this is such a good concrete example of Tom's passivity. He doesn't realize, like, as the pirate and Hester are talking, that like, oh, this guy kind of wants to be high class. Maybe I'll trick him into being overly high class and make a bunch of and kind of sell myself that way. It just is a thing that happens to him that he doesn't expect to happen. And like after this point, it's not like he spends time trying to teach them, like coming up with fake rules for the guy to follow.
Oh my god, that would have been great. What the hell?
Yeah, that would have been funny, and it would have been him as an active character, and he isn't. He just is like just a nothing. He just like kind of hangs out and notices that the daughter isn't hot.
Yeah, the pirate's daughter is not hot. No, that would have been so, and like how he's like a child abuser basically, but the pirate, not Tom.
Oh no, the pirate is such a just broad character of a villain. It's insane.
Oh my god, but you're right. That would have been so, and for a children's book, if that's what he's supposed to be writing, that would be great. Like slapstick comedy that's not cheesy necessarily.
Yeah, it would have been very funny. And the thing is, this is a pirate city, so they like kill the people that they take. They eat cities, but they kill the people or enslave them. And like Tom is like, oh, that's not municipal Darwinism. And like this should be a point where Tom realizes that municipal Darwinism is basically just might makes right. And so yeah, this has all of the high class ideas stripped from it. This is the bear, larger cities eat smaller cities, and like this is actually how gross it can be.
It's like the author is doing the reversal, right? Oh, this is a smaller version of my home, except like you said, it's stripped away, but they're pantomiming at being proper. Like that, but that's all his home is that they are still pantomiming being proper while still like it's a perfect, and I feel like that's definitely got to be done on purpose, but it feels like it's almost hidden behind like a ton of other stuff.
This is what I'm saying. It feels like in the adult version of this book, that's a thing that's talked about, but that was too complicated for 9-year-olds, so he cut it out. So we just get the underlying good. Yeah, it would be. I mean, that's the whole point of this story. And so like, it's really weird that like that doesn't come up. And it doesn't come up later. Tom never thinks about like, oh, the London is just doing the same thing. Yeah, the veneer of civility is stripped away. Thank you, Angry Otter. I'm having trouble talking this morning. And so that doesn't happen. They're around for a while. This really is a place that we should have skipped Airtown and the airships and Anna Fang and just been here because it's more interesting to get stuck on a pirate city. The pirate's idea is that the airship town has fallen down and is now easy prey and they can go grab it. And I thought, okay, this is kind of interesting. He's doing the free rider thing where the airship functioning helps all of the cities because it creates a method of trade between all of the different predator cities, right? But this pirate has this idea that even though it will hurt everyone in the long term and probably hurt him in the long term, he's going to get short-term gain by sacking this city and taking all of its wealth for short term. And I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea. But no, that's not actually what happens. It's just like he realized like, oh, there's a plot element I could kind of loop in here from earlier. I'm going to do that. That is never even hinted at.
That is exactly how it felt.
Yeah, and you also get, there's like certain places where like there's a bigger city getting eaten by several smaller cities, which I thought was like such a cool idea. In general, municipal Darwinism should have been a thing where it's like, okay, this system kind of makes sense, but you're increasingly destroying, like, no, there are no new resources entering the ecosystem. You're only having cities cannibalizing each other, and each time they're losing a little bit of the net resources. And so this system cannot continue, which is kind of hinted at in the book, but it's not.
It doesn't feel clear.
It doesn't feel clear, and it's not really the theme. Tom never realizes this. Some other people realize this, but he never realizes it. It never, and so we find out, by the way, that the evil governor's main plan is that they got, we haven't even talked about it, but there's an archaeotech super weapon called Medusa that's a big laser. And what they're going to do is they're going to use that to cut down this Chinese wall that protects a bunch of anti-tractionist cities, which are just like normal cities that hide out behind this wall. And then that's going to be a new hunting ground. And I thought that was a really cool kind of idea if they had engaged with like, okay, but like what happens when those cities run out? It's mentioned once at the end. I would have liked it if it was something where like they thought, oh, he's going to use Medusa against other predator cities. And then no, he's going to open this hunting ground for all of the predator cities so this ecosystem can continue, even though in the long term, it's a short-sighted. In the long term, it's not a great thing to do.
And it's a really nice like mirror of the whole idea of imperialism, right? Like the constantly taking over things or eating each other, and now we're going to go to someplace else and like do that as well. But sooner or later, there's going to be a time where they're going to have to fight themselves. Is like the inherent assumption that, or I guess assumption would be, is that they're at some point going to cannibalize themselves because they'll run out of everything else. And that is such an awesome theme for children to read about, in my opinion. And yet as this children's book displays, it is not like it didn't happen. It's not integrated
to the character arcs. It's not integrated into the world. It's not even, again, really mentioned a lot. It's mentioned at like one point.
It's like somebody's whispering it in the way background, like, hey, you know what'd be a good idea? And then like you can hear the whisper, but you're like, yeah, but that's not who's on stage. Like, yeah. You know?
Radella says, I'd argue capitalism, not imperialism. So it's kind of a mix of imperialism and colonialism. There's sort of a metaphor of colonialism going on in that it's Africa and Asia that have the non-traction cities, and it's Europe that like has the cities that want to eat all the other cities, but it doesn't really go anywhere as a metaphor, and I actually just didn't even feel like it was very clear.
Chantel, everybody, by the way, said, by the way, why can't pirates have a cool, useful pet like a sneaky, super loyal talking snake? Man, that was a very long descriptor. It can do stealthy recon. It can do silent chokehold takedowns. It can talk like a snob. Missed opportunity, in my opinion.
Look, all I want from books is cool shit, and authors refuse to give it to us. They just like, their imaginations are so static. It's terrible. They break into like this one place near a sea, and then they get stuck in the sea, and so his plans are foiled. And there's like, okay, everybody abandon city. And he has like a life raft, the pirate, that he brings Tom on, and then leaves his dozens of children to die in the city.
This guy is wildly like sociopathic. Like it's actually really sad, the description of when the daughter dies or whatever, is because Tom's thinking like while he's in the raft, he's like, all I could hear was, and then whatever her name was, the daughter's name, saying, oh, as she like basically is drowning. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty.
The book goes hardcore sometimes, but in this case, the problem is that it goes hardcore and then is immediately cartoony. So the governor is like, oh no, what a catastrophe. And Tom's like, I know your family. He's like, not those idiots. Literally, he says like, not those idiots. It's my city, my ambitions. And it's like, that is not a human response. That is a cartoon response. And so it takes a lot of pathos out of the scene. And it's just a place where it's like, what? The other problem is that Tom makes no effort to try to save anyone in the city. He doesn't even make the decision like, I can't save everybody. I have to get on the boat. He doesn't try try to do the right thing. He doesn't even try to do the wrong thing. He doesn't try to do anything. He just is there, and he gets basically just carted around, and he makes no effort to fight. It's not like the pirate like knocks him out and takes him. It's just like he just does nothing, and he has no viewpoint on it. Also, hey, nerds. Hey, Valerie. Hey, nerd. Here to vibe. Sounds good. But yeah, so, and again, it's a weirdly hardcore scene because you hear everybody in the ocean dying and like them getting cut down by like the other cities that had ambushed them or whatever. And they go to an island. The pirate is still like, I can do this. I can take this city with like 4 people. The bubble town, the airship town. And then he gets stuck in mud and starts to sink and they kill him. And again, it's like a weirdly dark moment, but it's also played for comedy as he like gurgles and falls into the mud and then they shoot him in the head. And that's the thing is this book in the second half will get really dark with characters dying and stuff, but it never really feels like it's consistent with the rest of the tone. Again, you have basically cartoon reactions to horrible things happening. It feels much more Bugs Bunny than it does like the underlying pathos of someone dying.
That's what I would say as well. That was what was so weird is that the movie, you know, with having real people as the characters and kind of matured upwards a little bit. In my opinion, with the way it's like the tone is, although not by much, but like it is a little bit more matured. Oh god, well, I went downstairs.
You're so weak. You're so weak. It's so funny. This is like the third time it's happened where you're just like really out of breath from walking upstairs. Oh, they have their last interaction with the Shrike because there's been like 2 other cases where like the Shrike showed up and they were able to trick their way out. And this is where the Shrike reveals to Hester that like, I want you to become my cyborg daughter. Again, potentially interesting. And she's like, you don't understand it because she wants to save Tom, and then later she'll be like, but I wanted that, and then I didn't want that. That's complicated and interesting, but it's not explored, and it's brought up too late for it to really be like as a temptation. You can't bring it up at the last minute.
It feels like an afterthought the way it's written.
Yeah, or it's supposed to be like a reveal, but the problem is you shouldn't. There's a modern problem that I blame J.J. Abrams for because I blame him for everything because I hate him. But stories will often leave reveals or twists until too late in the story because what's kind of interesting about a twist or reveal a lot of times is the fallout of it and how that changes the story. And if you leave it to the last 5 minutes of a movie, you can't process it like that. So, right. And so Tom is able to kill the Shrike. I don't really understand how because like he's supposed to have been unkillable up until this point. So I really don't understand this, but I also just wasn't super paying attention. So maybe it makes sense. And Hester, and in those last moments as he's dying, Shrike like remembers some of his older memories. And like there's a certain amount of pathos in the last fourth of this book that does kind of work. Again, if you ignore the fact that nothing has been built up to support it. And Hester is like has tears streaming down her eyes and she's mad at Tom. She's like, no, this is what I wanted. All I wanted was to be his cyborg daughter without memories.
That did slap kind of hard where she was like, no, you idiot. And she like where you think like maybe she's just sad that Shrike is now dead and that's just what's happening, which makes sense. And is sad in and of itself. But then you get the additional comment and, like, as you said, pathos of her being like, no, I wanted that. Why would you have taken that away from me?
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. But it's also not explored enough. Like, how does she really feel about this? We don't feel her mix of, like, familial love, but also longing to not feel, but also, like, what would that mean in the long... Like, there's a lot of really great conflict there that's not explored. Bisexual pirate Anna Fang shows up again. She is like, I'm not going to do her accent because again, anyway, because I don't want to be canceled. But
just
basically,
imagine a pantomime of a normal, like anybody who can do accents very horribly trying to do a Chinese accent.
But the thing is, that's actually how a Chinese accent sounds. It just sounds racist to do certain accents, even if you're doing them super well for whatever reason. Basically, at this point, they know that actually she wasn't just a normal sky pirate or smuggler or whatever. She was like, she's works for the Anti-Tractionist League. And Tom is like, oh no, but I believe in municipal Darwinism. And you're like, Really? You did not feel strongly about this in the first half of the book, but okay. And they go to the wall that's supposed to like protect the anti-traction cities from the traction cities. And like it's a really nice town, and like this town has a better sense of place than London does, even though London is in way more of this book. I don't really know what the author was thinking with that. And Tom is like, oh, it's a really nice town. How can we eat it? But how can we not? And this would have been an interesting part to be like, well, we're going to keep the best parts of the town when we eat it, or it will go towards building like just thinking about it,
like the whole these savages thing will, you know, like the British view, like, oh, these savages don't know what a nice life is like, they'll be able to learn so much history and blah blah blah. But that doesn't stand up either. It's because there's a lot of history, and like it's actively acknowledged by many of the people that are around him, which is also helpful. Like that's nice and diverse. That like, well, no, no, never mind. That's not the people who. It's the historian people with Catherine that talk about
yeah,
that. Never
that talk
mind.
about that.
Yeah.
But it's not like he sees like a Tibetan church and he's like, it won't be destroyed. It will be moved to the top of London. Like we'll keep this one part of it we like. And he doesn't think like, oh, but it won't have the children running in front of it that it does now. It won't be connected to the ground. It's not like that's kind of an interesting colonial metaphor of like, you can't just take these things that are not yours to take. And then if you did take them, it wouldn't be the same if you put them in a museum, which could conceivably be interesting with Shrike's view of wanting Hester not to change because he likes collecting things. Not linked, not interesting. I don't understand why authors don't understand how like metaphor and theme work. And so the wall people are like, the Death Star doesn't work. And then Anna Feng is like, yes, it does. And then Tom is like, guys, I'm going to shout in a meeting. And it's that scene where like I almost couldn't read it because it's a character being publicly embarrassed. And I hate those scenes in movies.
I don't remember this.
You don't remember this, or you didn't read this?
No. I got past this part a little bit, but I think I might have followed this.
Basically, the Chinese wall people are like, we can do it, we can defeat them. And Tom is like, but you guys shouldn't destroy London. You know, your cities will get eaten, but it'll be fine. And they're all like, you're a commie, not a commie. Sorry, my brain has really died today.
That's the vibe, though.
You tractionist scum. You're a barbarian. He's like, no, you're the barbarian, and he leaves the meeting.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Right, and then as he's wandering the city, he sees, oh, there's this Buddhist monk that looks a lot and walks a lot like Thaddeus Valentine, and he's like, you know what?
Strangely specific, but okay.
You know what? London shouldn't eat this place. I'm going to call him out. And so he tries to catch him, but he ends up catching a different Buddhist monk. And then he goes to Anna Feng and is like, I'm on your side, guys, now. Valentine is here. And we find out that Valentine is actually here to sabotage all of the air fleet of the Chinese people. And like he's able to do it. One guy is able to set a bunch of explosives to destroy them all.
Why did he, the historian...
Well, he's like historian adventurer. Remember, he's like, he went to the dead continent of America.
You can't tell me that the mayor dude doesn't have like super secret soldiers. That
oh well, that's another thing that's really stupid is that in the city they've learned how to make new stalkers, which is the hollow men that Shrike is, and it's like never really an interesting thing. It just is a thing they're able to do because they're evil, and then we'll never go anywhere. We don't get like suddenly an interesting fight scene between Hester Shaw, who was raised by a stalker but is still human, against a pure stalker. Like that's kind of an interesting conflict thematically. Not done. But anyway, so Valentine destroys the whole fleet and also stabs Anna Feng. And you're like, why are we killing off a character who seemed like they were going to be here for a while? But okay, weird. And Hester and Tom is now on the side of let's kill Valentine for revenge. They take her ship and they go towards London. And I want you to bear in mind that their plan is not to destroy the super weapon on London that's going to destroy the wall. They just want to kill Valentine. And very specifically, he at one point thinks, oh, we can't do anything to stop it. Why are we trying to do this one thing? And I'm like, that is a really good question, Tom. What the fuck is up with that? Like, the thing is, like, all of the plot lines in the book should be converging at this point towards, like, one goal. And they don't. It's just like, okay, you just want the characters there. Meanwhile, hot daughter Catherine, sees Valentine when he comes back, and she's like, you are the problem with society. How could you do this? You killed Hester Shaw's parents. She revealed all this. It's not interesting how she gets to any of this information, to be honest. She just works with Pod, who tells her. And, like, it's an interesting moment of, like, Valentine is not totally a villain. You get more the sense that he's the author is trying to paint him as a morally weak man, despite being
Yes.
a otherwise strong man. And that's an interesting idea, but it's done in such a broad, unsubtle way that I was like, really? Like, really? The dialogue is very broad. They tend to just say things, and they don't tend to like go through the steps of like, so an example of this is like when the pirate's family was lost, right? And Tom said, hey, that was a terrible, I'm so sorry for you. No, the pirate said, oh no, curse you, the city has fallen. And Tom's like, I'm so sorry for your family. He's like, not my family. I meant my city, you idiot. And that's almost literally the dialogue. It's not like he has the human reaction of like,
Yeah, now everything's gone.
everything's gone. Or it's not even like he has the reaction of like he slaps Tom and is like, of course I love my family, but the city too. And like, I'll take revenge on all of these. Like people, when they lose, they don't like to admit that they're morally vapid in the way that a cartoon character would. And so a lot of the dialogue here with Valentine feels like that. He's just like, I'm sorry. He doesn't do, you know what it is? He doesn't justify his own actions in the way that real people do. Real people tend to justify their bad actions through different logical fallacies, like it's a sunk cost thing, or like he's like, look, we had to do this, that we're running out of prey around here, you don't understand, our way of life is threatened, or stuff like that. Like he just doesn't do that. He just is like, I know, I suck. That's pretty much it. Okay, do you remember the next part?
You're so mean. Why are you such a butthole? I'm actually, I'm swooning with how upset I am that Pod and Dog die.
Oh, God, yes. No, so...
Are you serious? That was the only thing I liked, was the little romance thing between her and Pod.
Okay, so here's the problem. Catherine throughout this is not a great character, but she's better than Tom
Oh my
because she's
God.
actually in the
By
city.
miles.
She actively does things. She is having to grapple with stuff. She has an emotional connection to her father that feels real. Like she really does worship her father. You find out that everybody else kind of looks down on her for being a foreigner, even though she's trying to be like the ideal daughter. And she has like a little bit of a budding relationship with Pod, who's just like, I don't have hair and you have hair and hair is beautiful.
I really like that concept, how something's so gentle
Yes.
and soft, like in transit. And I like how she's like, oh my God, I'm in love, because I really like, that's such a cute moment and I love it. And I'm
No. It gets worse, Katie. You don't even know yet. So her and Pod have been hiding out of church and they come up with a scheme to blow up Medusa, the super laser weapon. This is going to be another Tamlin situation. We need Katie's unvarnished opinions. And then what happens is that then like the evil mechanics come to get them and there's like a fight and then the museum people come out with like all rusty guns to help fight. And that's cute, but you're like... This is kind of like an odd thing, and like, how is this going to connect to the Tom and Hester plot line? And basically, they get her and Pod try to get to the secret meeting to get close to the super laser, and on the way, a ship or something falls on them, and Pod gets crushed, like splat. Yeah. Oh, and then before this, they had shot the dog. They just shot him. Yeah.
Doesn't he know that the one thing you don't do is shoot the dog?
There's a reason for this, which at this point I was like, oh, this is where this is going. I know where this is going. At this point, they get to the place and she's like, Dad, okay, so they're all going to shoot the laser at the wall. And Valentine is there with Hoover. His name is not Hoover. It's like something else. The evil mayor. Catherine's father's airship was fell on Pod. Yes, because what happened is that Tom dropped Hester Shaw off and is like, all right, I'll stay in the air and come get you. And she's like, leave. And he's like, I'll stay. And then he has like a fight out with her father, with Valentine's airship, and he destroys the windows and then it falls and destroys Pod. And then, so they're all in the city, the place. There's this kind of interesting thing where Valentine goes up to the evil mayor and is like, we don't have to do this. We don't have to eat the cities. And you're like, this is way, way too, just an unsubtle and not real person way of him suddenly being like, we don't have to do municipal Darwinism. Like, even with if you assume that Valentine has had a change of heart, he's not suddenly going to say like, oh, we don't need to do, like, it's kind of like if somebody had a change of heart and was like, Mr. President, we don't have to do democracy anymore. Like, that's not how you would rationalize this idea to another person. You wouldn't go after their fundamental beliefs right before they shoot a super weapon. And Chrome, which is the mayor's guy's name, is like, oh, you don't understand. We're going to go in there and we're going to eat everything. And we're going to not only eat that, we're going to eat all the cities of the world. And then we're going to like tunnel into the earth and move the planet to eat other planets, and we're going to keep going.
What?
And it's kind of like a maniacal.
Wait, does that really, that dialogue happens?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, it's a little bit of an interesting idea because it's like, oh, okay, where does this kind of a philosophy end? It doesn't end anywhere. It just keeps going. But it's also really stupid.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's a fascinating concept, but that's like cartoonish. Like, that literally sounds like an evil villain in a daytime cartoon explaining their ultimate idea.
Yeah, it really does. And it's not like this has been built up as like the church of the ever hungry mob, the great maw, like, you know, and like this is the extension of their true religious beliefs or something. That might be kind of interesting. But anyway, they're in there. Hester gets caught by some stalkers. Again, no real understanding of how these stalkers might relate back to her as the actual child of a stalker, the Shrike. And so she's like, Valentine, meh. And Valentine draws his sword and is going to stab her. And Catherine's like, no, I can't do this. Oh, also because Hester might actually be Valentine's daughter. It's like, it's not really described or not, but he's like, the timeline kind of works out. So Catherine's like, I can't let him stab my sister. So she does that thing where she steps in the way instead of pushing her out of the way. And he stabs her. And you're like, oh no. And she's like, it's cold, Papa. And he's like, how could I have done this? And no. As she's falling, her head hits a panel. And that the machine was asking for a password, and that gives it an incorrect password, and so it won't fire, and now it's going to explode because all the power is building up. Yes. Yes, the way that if the machine gets defeated is her head hit a panel. And again, it's this weird juxtaposition of Looney Tunes logic next to like a really dark thing happening. Hester immediately forgets about revenge. It's weird. She immediately forgets about any revenge. She doesn't even think about it. I don't even know. There's a line that she's like, and then she didn't really want revenge. And so she's helping Valentine get Catherine to the roof where they can get to not Nate. Why do I keep thinking it's Nat? It's because his last name is Natworthy. But to Tom on the roof where there's like a hospital in the ship that can save Catherine, and like her and Valentine are now working together to get Catherine there. And so they get to the top and she jumps on the ship, but
are you telling me this entire encounter Tom is in the air?
Oh yeah, no, and has nothing to do with anything? Yeah. It's weird that Tom just actually really has nothing to do with this story. He could have been replaced by like a Roombot. What are those called?
A Roomba?
A Roomba, yes. He could have just been replaced by a Roomba. And the story would basically be the same.
I'm in shock. Like, I'm genuinely, like, taken aback.
Also, I'm not really leaving out any nuance. It really is like this, and Valentine is all like, oh no, my daughter. And then by the time they get there, though, Catherine is dead. And again, the thing about this is there is a certain amount of pathos to what's going on because Catherine is the one that we liked the most. Characters have died. The city is like gonna blow up. And so like there is a sense of like weight, but none of it is really earned. And I think that's one of the things that kind of bothers me about it a little bit is that it's not really earned. Catherine's death just feels like tragedy for the sake of tragedy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so he stays on London as Hester and fly away, and then London explodes and is completely obliterated.
Meaning all the characters we now spent 8 hours getting to know are all dead but two.
Yes, exactly. And you realize like, oh, that's why they killed the dog and Pod, is because they were going to die anyway. Like, I think he had his mind set on London exploding, and if that's the case, then like, yeah, everybody on it has to die, which is probably also why Tom doesn't have parents, is because then them dying would be a problem. And like thematically, it's kind of interesting that London.
Yes, please tell me. Tell me how this is so interesting thematically.
You know, the greed of these people destroyed an entire city of the elite, and this ideology destroyed themselves. And so there is a certain amount of like, oh, I don't know what the term is, dramatic irony, like and pathos to a whole city being destroyed. But at the same time, it's like
it's not that interesting. There's so much loss of world from this. It literally feels like they tore up the picture of this world, threw it out, and started with a brand new canvas, but just two dirty blots on it, which are the two characters.
And like the thing about it is like if you're gonna have a story like this where you have characters but their main goals don't necessarily align with the life-changing ones of the if their goals are not aligned with saving the universe, then that's kind of interesting in that it puts you into more of a on the ground, like how we all experience life. Like, I'm not explaining this well. Usually the stakes in a story are the end of the world, but if the end of the world is being dealt with by other people and the story is about somebody else and their stakes, then that can kind of give you a sense of like, oh, we're all insects before the machinations of the world. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a hurricane, yes, the governor makes big life-changing decisions, but you and I, like, we decide to go through the flood or stay in our house or not. Like, and that actually is kind of interesting. But the problem is that the whole book up until this point has not really
set up for that at all.
Right. And so you might say that the author was trying to do some dramatic irony, but it doesn't really feel dramatic like irony. It really just feels like, why didn't Tom and Nat try to destroy the ship? Like the Medusa, not the ship, the Medusa. It feels weird that like they were just like, oh, we're going to just go kill Valentine in the place where he is, where we could stop the Medusa, but we're not going to.
But also her head hits the machine and that's what instigates it. That is not funny. Like, not with the framing of all of this, and also with the amount of like love that kind of got put into Catherine. Like, there's a bit of love into her character, and I felt like very tender towards her storyline. Even like, I mean, very tender is a very generous word, but or a phrase.
You know what it is? She's fridged. That's what it is. So here's the problem with her hitting her head stopping the Medusa. That is not an action she took. That is karmic justice for London and for Valentine. That is the dramatic irony of them trying to do this thing and then being foiled by the absurdities of life. She did not make a decision. She did not sacrifice herself for the city. She just got fridged so that Valentine's storyline could end the way the author wanted it to, with the correct irony. She did make a choice to save Hester, but that's so random, and it's not a culmination of her storyline up until this point.
Dude, it would have been so easy for Hester, Pod, Tom, and Catherine, and Dog to all be able to get saved. And honestly, several characters from, the mountain, like the Cora dude, like, I feel like he should have lived and been with them too, and maybe he was the person. I think
he does live. He's just still on the tower.
No, but he should be involved in the plot line or something. I don't know. I just like see this different picture of like what was supposed to be the ending. You know what I mean?
Radella Hardwick says, but Catherine did make a decision. She brought a damn bomb with her, and then Angry Otter says, she decided not to use the bomb, though. Yeah, that was weird. At one point, she just doesn't use the bomb because she sees her father there. So the culmination of her storyline is that she felt too attached to her father to do the right thing. Her human frailty got in the way of stopping this massive thing that could have destroyed the entire city. And like, thematically, that's a really weird message. The thing is, I think the most charitable understanding of this is that the author just wanted a big dramatic tragedy, and so like all the other plot lines kind of had to go and be subservient to it. And it's interesting because if you see the movie, in the movie, London doesn't blow up. It just gets like stopped or destroyed or something like that. And Catherine lives and leaves the survivors, leads all of London's citizens to the wall, and they'll have to live in like a static city now. And that's actually kind of a better ending in a lot of ways because it's more interesting in terms of thematically, like, oh, we can't continue to do this non-renewable resource bit, and we're gonna have to like live with other people and learn to
like literally let go of the past. A whole theme for this.
Yeah, and the thing is, also in the movie, what happens finally with Valentine and Hester is that like she's fighting with him on top of an airship, and he's like, and like she stabs him or something. He grabs her and he's like, "Do you want to die? Let's die together." And she goes, "No, I don't want to die." And she jumps onto Tom's airship, and like then Valentine dies anyway. But the thing is, like, I kind of thought that was stupid when I first watched it. I was like, oh, really? The ending of her revenge story is that she doesn't want revenge. She wants to live. Okay. Groundbreaking stuff. But it's still a lot more satisfying than what happens in this book, where she's just like, oh, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I don't care about revenge anymore. Like, it's so random how she's just like, meh.
It's her love for Tom. It changed her.
Here's the thing. I really want to like her and Tom. I really do. Because I love the idea of like girl with enormous scar, not thinking she's good enough, and then she meets somebody who sees her, like, and sees the true her, and like at the end of the book, that's supposed to be what it is that she's always pushed people away because they could never love her because of her scar. But with Tom, she realizes she doesn't need to push him away; she can be with him, and they like cry and hug each other. And like, I want to like that, but it's not really in the book, and that's how the book ends.
Wow, what a waste of time. That is wild how awful that ends. That ending is sloppy. That ending is sloppy. That writer's work needs cleanup.
I'm curious to see if he's written any adult things later, and I would be curious to see, because I do think he actually has a lot of talent, even though none of that is in display in this book. And I could see where maybe he seems to like the idea of events just happening, and they're kind of the absurdities of like reality and coincidence almost to a certain extent. Like there's a certain term for that I'm forgetting, and I could see how in a book that's more put together and there more and there was less YA-ness about it, that could kind of work. So I'd be interested to see if maybe that's something he's able to refine in later books. So I really should look it up. I didn't before this. But yeah, it was just a real, like, just every aspect of this book was weak. And that was what I felt like halfway through. I talked to Katie yesterday. Yes, we talk off the podcast, guys. No, you'll never get access to our hilarity.
That was really awful.
And I was just like, there's just nothing about this book. Nothing pulls me to it. It's just such a blank nothing. And that's kind of the thing, is it's just a blank nothing.
It's not poorly written at all, like as far as like the actual prose and everything. It's fine. There, like, for the most part, it's kind of just like bland, and it's like, you know, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just whatever.
It's bland, and then every once in a while it'll have a nice description.
Like that Shrike chapter when he's underwater. I loved that description. It was almost, it wasn't cartoony, but it was like spirited. You know what I mean? It had like a little color to it.
It's
color.
almost a little bombastic or operatic.
Yeah, but also in a really badass way, because it's like this mechanical dude walking underneath the water.
The one I really liked is at one point he mentions that the spotlights of London, or one of the cities, turned on like the antennas of an insect flickering through, and I was like, oh, that is such a good image to think of it as, like, and then it backs up the predatory city concept. Here, I'm checking really quick if he's written any adult ones. And
no,
it doesn't look like it.
Not really.
He wrote another series that was like a prequel to this from like 1,000 years before. That might be kind of interesting to look at, because that one's supposed to be like a little bit more realistic-y.
Oh, my brain hurts.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I was so not here this morning. I took caffeine and it did not.
Oh, I've had 2 espressos and a coffee.
Thank you guys for joining us. This was a fun live stream. I think this book is, if you have an 8 or 9-year-old, I think this is a good book to read to them. Yeah. I think if you're older than that, you're not going to love it. I actually don't think the movie's that much worse than the book. Like, I know people don't say that, but like,
no, it's actually, like, I mean, I don't know about the ending, because the ending sounds very different, and I don't remember the ending movie part, and I didn't read it, so that's not very helpful. But everything in the beginning was, like, word for word, a lot of the same stuff.
And honestly, the actresses that play Catherine and Hester are very pretty, so that's also a bonus above the book.
Hey, Catherine in the book's supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah, but you can't see her in a visual medium. A lot of hair. Yeah, she has a good head of hair.
Also, she's 15.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Yeah, all right, thank you guys for joining us. We love you, our parasocial darlings.
All right, bye.